Have you ever had that strange feeling that your day is being shaped by invisible instructions? Coded into the apps and websites you use every single day. It's this sense of being subtly guided or maybe even pushed by some hidden code. Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Hello to all viewers of my channel. That quote, it really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? It describes a feeling so many of us have, but we might not have the words for it. It's that quiet, nagging feeling of being a little bit out of control in a world that feels like it's being shaped by invisible hands.
So, does that hit home for you? If that sense of unease resonates, well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're going to dismantle the architecture behind that feeling, piece by piece, so we can see how it really works.
So how are we going to do that? Here's our blueprint for today's explainer. First, we're going to define that feeling of being watched. Then, we'll go inside the digital bubble to see the mechanics. After that, we'll look at the compulsion loop engine, the biological hook. Then we'll cover the psychological price tag, see how this scales up to pull society apart. And, most importantly, we'll talk about how we can start reclaiming our digital selves.
All right, first up, let's put a name to this feeling, this digital unease. What do we actually call it when we feel like we're being nudged and managed by systems we can't even see?
It's called algorithmic anxiety. And it's so important to get this. This isn't just some vague fear of technology, like in a sci-fi movie. Researchers call it a socio-technical condition. And really, that's just a fancy way of saying it's a deep-seated anxiety that comes from feeling like we're losing our autonomy, our free will, in a world mediated by code.
Okay, so we have a name for it, but how is this anxiety actually built around us? Let's peel back the layers and take a look inside the architecture of our digital isolation.
Now, this distinction is absolutely crucial. An epistemic bubble, well, that can happen by accident. You just end up in a space where you don't hear from other sides. But an echo chamber, that's way more deliberate. It's a structure that's actually built on distrust, where outside sources are actively painted as unreliable to keep you locked inside. You don't just miss other viewpoints, you're literally taught to reject them.
And this is the path that takes you deeper. We've all experienced the rabbit hole effect, right? You watch one video on, say, baking bread, and suddenly your entire feed is nothing but sourdough starters for the next 3 weeks. That's the algorithm in action, leading you down an increasingly narrow path because its only goal is to keep you watching. And a hyper-focused, reinforcing chain of content is amazing at doing just that.
Okay, now let's get under the hood and look at the engine that powers this entire system. What's so fascinating, and honestly a little scary here, is that it's not just psychological, it's biological.
This is the infamous dopamine loop, and it's the absolute core of digital addiction. It's so simple. You take a tiny action, like a scroll or a swipe. The system gives you an unpredictable reward, a funny meme, an interesting post. Your brain then releases dopamine, that feel-good chemical, and that little rush creates a powerful, powerful urge to do it all over again. It is literally the same neurological principle as a slot machine.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. It shows why that digital loop feels so different from, real life. Think about the difference between getting a like and finishing a big project at work. One is a quick, cheap, fleeting high. The other is a deep, lasting satisfaction. Look at that dopamine release row. These platforms are engineered for high peaks and short hits, which provokes compulsion. A natural reward, though, that's moderate and sustained, and it promotes actual motivation. Over time, this literally rewires our brains to crave constant, superficial hits over deep, meaningful accomplishment.
And here's the most brilliant and sinister part of the design. That feeling of anxiety, that irritability you get when you put your phone down for a while, that is not a bug. It is a feature. It is a biological punishment designed to make disconnecting feel so uncomfortable that you're pulled right back in.
So we've seen the biological hook. We understand the trap. Now let's start to tally up the psychological price tag, the very real-world cost to our collective mental health.
40%. Let that number just sink in for a moment. Nearly half of all teenagers say they feel anxiety specifically because of the content social media feeds are showing them. This isn't some minor side effect. This is a massive public health issue hiding in plain sight.
So how exactly does this happen? Well, algorithms relentlessly push these idealized, filtered images, which just fuels social comparison and tanks our self-esteem. They amplify that fear of missing out, or FOMO. And maybe worst of all, if the algorithm detects that you engage with content that makes you anxious, it can actually feed you more of it, creating this vicious pathological feedback loop
all for the sake of engagement.
But the damage doesn't just stop at the individual level. The exact same mechanisms that create personal anxiety are scaling up and are actually pulling our entire society apart at the seams. 93%. That is a staggering figure from a study that found the overwhelming majority of users were basically only being fed news that confirmed what they already believed. This is exactly how echo chambers get hardened into concrete and how we stop seeing ourselves as citizens in a shared reality and start acting more like digital soldiers in opposing tribes.
And this brings us to what might be the most crucial point of this whole explainer. The polarization we see tearing things apart online, it's not an accident. It's the logical and very profitable outcome of a business model that's designed to maximize engagement at any cost. And what's highly engaging? Outrage, fear, conflict. Those emotions keep us glued to the screen. The algorithm is just doing what it was built to do.
Now look, I know this can all sound pretty bleak, but this isn't about despair, it's about understanding. Because once we understand how the machine works, we gain the power to act. So how do we start to fight back?
The single most powerful tool we have is right here, developing algorithmic thinking. It's about making a conscious shift from being a passive consumer of content to being an active, informed digital citizen. It means constantly asking yourself, okay, why am I seeing this? Whose interest does this serve? And how is this trying to shape my perception of the world?
And the solution has to be a two-pronged attack. On an individual level, we can all practice better digital hygiene. Things like taking intentional breaks, sometimes called dopamine fasting, can help reset our brain's reward system. But that's not enough. We also have to act as a society, demanding transparency, accountability, and ethical design from these platforms. The ultimate goal here is to force a systemic shift, away from a model that profits from our distraction and toward one that prioritizes human well-being.
And so that leaves us with this one final critical question to think about. When you scroll, when you click, when you like, when you share, what are you truly engaging with? Are you engaging with the content itself, or are you engaging with the invisible architecture that was designed to capture your attention for somebody else's profit? Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive into the unseen architecture of our digital lives. If this sparks some new ideas for you, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscription. And I'm really curious, what topic should we deconstruct next? Let me know your ideas down in the comments. I'll see you next time.